Van pulled off the headset, blinking. Mrs. H, this is efficiency. I also used it to check if the mail had come yet so I wouldn't have to walk all the way to the curb. You're a professional athlete who is too lazy to walk 30 feet, Reba deadpanned. Truly, the spirit of the Olympian lives on. The drone was just one of the many ways Van was trying to help during the final weeks of Cheyenne's pregnancy. He had become a whirlwind of nervous energy, convinced that every sigh from Cheyenne was the beginning of a 48-hour labor. Chapter 13. Nesting Rage. If Van was nervous, Cheyenne was something else entirely. She had entered the nesting phase, which in Cheyenne's case looked less like building a cozy home and more like a tactical reorganization of the entire zip code. Van, why is the alphabetization of the spice rack inverted? She shouted from the kitchen. I thought it looked more modern that way? Van stammered, hiding behind Reba. We are having a baby, Van. How am I supposed to find the cumin in a crisis if the C is at the back? Reba watched the scene with a mixture of nostalgia and pity. Honey, the last time you used cumin was in 2004, and even then, I'm pretty sure you thought it was a type of fabric. Mom, don't take his side. Everyone is against me. The baby is coming, and we don't have enough organic bamboo swaddles. You have 34 swaddles, Cheyenne. You could swaddle a mid-sized giraffe. The going good blues had returned with a vengeance. Cheyenne was convinced that her karma was still unbalanced, despite the birthday party for Kira. She spent her days apologizing for things she had done in middle school and trying to find a baby name that was cooler than Siri, but more grounded than a celestial body. What about North? Cheyenne asked one afternoon. Already taken by a Kardashian, Kira said, looking up from her bass guitar. What about Stormy? Barbara Jean would sue you for copyright infringement, Reba noted. Chapter 14. The Final Countdown. The Houston heat had finally surrendered to a crisp October breeze when the moment arrived. It wasn't a dramatic Hollywood scene with water breaking in a grocery store. It was 3 a.m., and Cheyenne was sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal when she felt the first real contraction. Mom, she whispered, knocking on Reba's door. Reba was awake instantly. It was a mother's instinct, a frequency she was always tuned into. Is it time? I think so. Okay. Van, wake up. The house erupted into a familiar, chaotic ballet. Van managed to put his shirt on backward and spent 5 minutes trying to find the go bag, which he had hidden in the garage for security. Kira was strangely calm, already starting the car. I'm ready, Jake said, stumbling out of his room. Do I need my basketball? No, Jake. We're going to the hospital, not the NBA Finals, Reba shouted. They arrived at the hospital in record time, thanks to Van's shortcut, which involved driving over a curb and through a Starbucks parking lot. In the delivery room, the usual cast of characters assembled. Brock arrived in his golf attire, looking terrified, and Barbara Jean showed up with a labor survival kit that included sage, a bedazzler, and a weather map of the hospital floor. I'm tingling, Cheyenne, Barbara Jean shouted. The barometric pressure in this room is perfect for a baby girl. Get her out of here, Cheyenne moaned, or I will use this IV pole as a weapon. Chapter 15. The Arrival. The labor was long, painful, and filled with the kind of biting sarcasm that only the hearts could provide. I hate you, Van, Cheyenne screamed during a particularly intense contraction. I hate you, and your stupid hair, and your stupid heated seats. I know, honey, Van said, tears streaming down his face as he held her hand. I'm sorry. I'll sell the car. I'll walk everywhere. Don't you dare. I want that car. Reba stood at the head of the bed, a steady hand on Cheyenne's shoulder. She was the anchor. She had done this 3 times, and she knew the rhythm of the pain and the miracle that followed. Focus on me, Cheyenne, Reba whispered. You're a survivor, just like me. At 10:14 a.m., a new sound filled the room, a sharp, healthy cry that silenced the bickering and the monitors. It's a girl, the doctor announced. The silence that followed was heavy with awe. Even Barbara Jean was quiet. They placed the tiny, red-faced bundle in Cheyenne's arms. Van was sobbing openly now, his head resting on Cheyenne's shoulder. She's beautiful, Xian whispered, her anger gone, replaced by a soft, glowing wonder. She looks like Mom. She has my nose, Brock noted, peering over. Let's hope she doesn't have your sense of direction, Reba joked, though her eyes were wet. They named her Sarah Hart Montgomery, a simple, grounded name. Chapter 16. New Horizons. A week later, the Hart house was filled with the smell of baby powder and the sound of soft lullabies. Reba sat in the rocker in the nursery, holding Sarah. The house was quiet for a moment. Van and Cheyenne were finally sleeping. Jake was at a real basketball practice, and Kira was at a band rehearsal this time, with the bass player staying on his own floor. Reba looked down at the new life in her arms. She thought about the journey from being a heartbroken divorcee to being the matriarch of this sprawling, beautiful, chaotic mess. She wasn't just a single mom anymore. She was the grandmother of a new generation. She was a business owner. She was a partner. The smooth sailing she had once dreamed of seemed so small now. Why would anyone want a calm sea when they could have the thrill of the waves, the strength of the wind, and a crew that would never, ever let them sink? She looked out the window at Vesper Avenue. The sun was setting again, a deep, fiery red. "Welcome to the family, Sarah," Reba whispered. "It's a little bit crazy around here. We're dumber than a sack of stupid sometimes. We fight, we bicker, and we use butt-rometers to predict the rain." She kissed the baby's forehead. "But we love each other, and in this house, that's the only rule that matters." Reba leaned back in the chair, the rhythm of the rocker matching the beat of her heart. She was tired, she was overworked, and she was surrounded by idiots. And she wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter 17. The Montgomery Minute. 2 years had passed since Sarah Hart Montgomery made her loud entrance into the world. In the Hart house, time wasn't measured in years, but in the level of chaos that could be achieved before breakfast. Van Montgomery, now the self-proclaimed king of domestic efficiency, had discovered a new passion: social media. Using the same drone that had once violated neighborhood privacy, he started a vlog titled The Montgomery Minute. "Hey, what's up, Vanatics?" Van shouted into his GoPro, which was duct-taped to the drone. "Today, we're testing the aerodynamic properties of Sarah's toddler-proof sippy cup. Can it survive a drop from 30 feet? Let's find out." "Van, if you drop that cup on my hibiscus, I'm going to use your drone as a target for skeet shooting," Reba called out from the porch. "Mrs. H, the fans want content. We're at 47 subscribers. One more and I get a free trial of ProGlow skin filter." Sarah, now a golden-haired whirlwind of energy, was chasing the drone across the yard. Cheyenne was watching from the window, laughing as she folded yet another mountain of laundry. "Van is obsessed with market penetration," Cheyenne said as Reba walked in. "He spent 3 hours yesterday analyzing the best time to post a video of himself eating a spicy pepper while holding a baby." "He's a moron, honey," Reba said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "But he's our moron, and at least it keeps him out of the spice rack." Chapter 18. The Ghost of Boyfriends Past. The tranquility of the Montgomery Minute era was shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. Reba was hosting an open house for a charming Victorian in the Heights, the kind of house that smelled of lavender and potential. She was straightening the decorative pillows when the doorbell rang. She adjusted her blazer, put on her closer stare, and opened the door. Standing on the porch was a man who looked like he had stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. He was tall, his hair was a distinguished silver at the temples, and his eyes were a piercing, familiar blue. "Brian?" Reba whispered, her professional mask slipping for a fraction of a second. "Reba Nell Hart," the man said, a slow, Texas-sized grin spreading across his face. "You haven't changed a bit." Brian McClintock. He was the one that got away before Brock Hart had even entered the picture. They had been high school sweethearts, a pair of firebrands who dreamed of leaving Houston and conquering the world. Brian had left to become a major developer in Austin. Reba had stayed, married Brock, and raised a family. "What are you doing here, Brian? Are you looking for a Victorian fixer-upper?" "I heard the best realtor in Houston was handling this listing," Brian said, leaning against the doorframe. "I also heard she might be available for a steak dinner and some conversation about the last 30 years. Reba felt a flutter in her chest, a sensation she hadn't felt since before the Jablonski house war. It was exciting, it was dangerous, and it was exactly the kind of complication she didn't need. Chapter 19. The Brock Intervention. News of the gentleman visitor traveled through the Hart family like a wildfire through dry brush. Within an hour, Van had dispatched the drone to patrol the Victorian house, and Brock Hart had arrived at Reba's front door, looking hilariously insecure. "Reba, I hear you're dating a developer," Brock shouted, his golf club still in his hand. "Is it because he has more land than me? Is it the Austin zip code?" "Brock, go home." "You're married to a weather vlogger," Reba said, trying to push him off the porch. "I'm concerned for your welfare, Reba. Developers are sharks. They'll pave over your heart and put a strip mall on it." Suddenly, Barbara Jean appeared from behind a bush, wearing a climate awareness sash and holding a megaphone.